Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com. I'm here today with a hand from a 5,000 euro buy-in European Poker Tour main event. We have 50,000 chips to start. Blinds are 250, 500 with a 50 ante. Folds around to a loose aggressive European kid. In the low jack seat, he has 75,000 to start, so he's chipped up a bit. He makes it 1,200 from the low jack, and it folds around to me with ace 7 of diamonds on the button. This is a hand that I think you can really go any way with. You can fold, you can call, you can 3-bet. I prefer 3-betting this hand today, mainly because it gives you a very aggressive image, which will hopefully allow you to get paid off later in the future. You could also just call, though. I tend to not fold in this spot, mainly because I am confident in my post-flop skills, and I am happy to play pots in position on the button. So this time I do like to 3-bet. I think this is fine. I do make it 3,000, so he made it 1,200. I made it 3,000. Typically 2.5 times your opponent's raise is a nice sizing. You could make it a little bit larger if you feel like it. There's no reason you have to make it 2.5x. You could go even smaller. You could go a little bit larger. You just have to be aware of what that does to your range and how it sets up stack sizes, because you don't want to put yourself in a spot where you make it easy for your opponent to blow you off your hand, or also a spot where you can't bet 3 times after the flop for value if you choose to do so. So anyway, our opponent calls, which is fine. Flop comes ace 7 6 all hearts. This is great. A lot of people look at this flop and think, oh my god, he could have a flush. And he could have a flush, but he probably doesn't have a flush. Odds of him having a flush are quite low. Notice there are only a few combinations of those hands, mainly king queen, king jack, queen jack, jack 10, maybe queen 10, then 10 9, 10 8. And that's about it. Maybe 5-4. So that's maybe 10 hands or so, right? Compare that to the number of combinations of all the other hands he could have, like pocket kings, for example, has 6 hands right there by itself. Pocket queens has 6 hands. Pocket jacks has 6 hands. So there are just many more combinations of non-flush hands than flushes. So you don't need to be so worried about your opponent having you beat at the moment. So for the most part right now, we're going to play our hand as if it is the effective nuts. And we do want to bet. We want to bet an amount that doesn't give him great odds with a draw. Like, say he does have pocket jacks with a jack of hearts. I don't really want him to be able to easily stick around. So we want to make at least some sort of a bet. So he checks, and I do bet 4,000 into the 7,200 pot. I like this. I can maybe even go a hint bigger. If he check raises me on the flop, I'm not going to be happy about this. I'm probably going to call, see what develops, but we're not trying to fold, I don't think. Whenever your opponent's nut range is very small, you really just cannot justify folding too often. Also realize I could have a lot of those nut hands as well. So it's not like my opponent should have way more of them than I should. So anyway, I bet 4,000. He calls. When he calls, I'm very happy with my hand. I have the best hand almost every time. Turns the jack, doesn't change anything at all, besides now I lose to, well, the pocket jacks I said he could have. And also ace jack. Ace jack is also a hand that's well within his range, but given I have an ace in my hand, that cuts down on the number of combinations of aces that he could have. So the odds of him having ace jack are also quite low. So he checks, and I bet again. 7,500 this time. I think I would have preferred a little bit of a larger bet. Again, mainly to price out the junky draws, like pocket 10s with a 10 of hearts. But whenever I bet 7,500, I'm actually giving him pretty good odds to call. He needs to win about 25% of the time in this scenario. And he probably will with a lot of his hands, like in pocket, like say he has king queen with the king of hearts, he's always going to stick around, or really even any gut shot or any pair with a heart, he's not going to fold, and he's getting roughly the right odds. So I think I would have preferred a slightly bigger bet. He does call. River's a 3. We lose to 5-4, but we're not so worried about 5-4. Opponent checks, and I have to decide if I want to value bet. So the pot's 30,000. We have to decide how much to bet. We have to ask ourselves, what are we trying to get called by? Here we're trying to get called by an ace with, not, well, any kicker. Pretty much any kicker is fine besides a jack. Or we're trying to get called by under pairs. Or we're trying to get called by only worst 2 pairs. So I don't really think there's a bet amount we can bet that's going to get us calls from under pairs at this point. So I'm not so concerned with those. So now I have to ask, what are the odds my opponent has 2 pair? I think it's quite low. So I'm not really trying to make a big bet to get called by those. So my main concern is, how do I get called by an ace? So if he's sitting here with ace king, ace queen, ace 10, ace 9, how much is he going to call? And I think if I start betting really large, like 25,000 into the 30,000 pot. I think he could conceivably make a snug fold. However, I think if I bet something like 16,000, he will be somewhat inclined to look me up. I may actually prefer a slightly smaller bet than this today, maybe something like 14,000. I think a bet of 14,000 really does ensure I get called by the aces. So I think that may be my preferred bet size today. If he check shoves me on the river, I'm going to be absolutely sick and probably fold. But he does not. He just calls and we win a nice pot. So this worked out pretty well for me. Could my opponent have done anything different? Let's pretend he has ace queen. Could he have done anything different in this hand? And I don't really think he can. I think he's kind of roped into just calling down. He loses to ace jack and ace king, but those are primarily the only value hands that he loses to. If he thinks I have a lot of ace sevens, ace sixes, ace threes in my range, then maybe he should start folding on the river. And that's okay. I mean, he has to realize that he could have all the flushes here, assuming he's not check raising me on the flop with the flushes, which I don't really think he should check raise the flop with the flushes too often. So if he is check calling all of his good hands, then ace queen is pretty much the bottom of his calling range, or near the bottom of his calling range by the river. So I think he actually could fold that to a river bet, but it's a pretty nasty spot for him. If he had worse than ace queen, I do think he should probably find a fold on the river. So kind of a cool spot. It demonstrates being aggressive pre-flop and then also getting a pretty good amount of value after the flop when you do get there. So I like this hand. This is something that I do a decent amount, especially with deep stacks, and this generates you a loose image and sometimes to win big pots. Thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you next time.